Call to order the Policy Review Committee meeting for Monday, September 25th. In attendance is Jeff Scott.
Scott Potts.
Rob Hurley.
Absent is Carol Bites and Connor Kurtz. All right. So, the first item in old business, which we only have one old business today, which is great, is the graduation. And this was one, I think last time we met on the 28th of August, we said you guys were going to review this one.
Yeah, we're going to, and here's what I wanted to talk about a little bit. This is going to, first, I read through it again. It's very generic what's there. So, number one, we could pass this and then come back with administrative guidelines on this if we choose to as a group. Number two, this, if we want to put it in policy, this is going to churn for a while for us here, because what we're looking at, I'll give you an example. One of the things that we're looking at right now is the number of credits. We require in Daniel Boone a higher number of credits than the state minimum, which actually creates some of the scheduling difficulties that Preston was talking about at the high school. And so there's some different ideas in terms of what we should be doing credit-wise and how it ties into some of the study hall stuff Mr. Martino was talking about during the last meeting. So that's probably going to churn a while here if we decide if we want to put in a number of credits in there. If we want to leave it very generic, we can pass that as is generically and then come up with an AG down the road saying if we decide we want to change the number of credits for whatever reason down the road, we can go ahead and do that type of thing. So either way, I'm fine with that. That's written very generically right there, so we can either table that one for a while until we're done all those discussions as a group, or number two, we can just pass it as is into an administrative guideline, in regards.
Well, I mean, we can amend the policy.
We could do that too if you want to do that.
I mean, I'd rather you guys come up with what you want to be the policy and then amend it than.
Because that's going to take, I see that being a couple month process.
All right.
So we can amend the it's up to you, however you want to handle that, it's fine with me.
All right, so we're going to move the first reading as
That's
is.
fine, let's do it.
And I'm just going to put a note that we'll amend at a later date. All right. And that is all she wrote from old business. Look at that. We have two in legal review. Are you aware of these two, Mr. Hurley? This is
This was
unlawful harassment and personal necessity leave.
Policy 336 is ready to go to first reading. I told Kathy to go to first reading. I guess she wouldn't you guys, but I'm fine with that going to first reading because that's complete. That's already been consistent with the language we need to have. The other one, I circled back with Brian on that. He'd actually delegated that task to one of his other lawyers, and she promised me that within the next 10 days they'll have an updated policy. So for our next meeting, that will be there.
All right. So we're moving 336 as is.
Yep.
And then this is still being reviewed.
Yeah. She said she'll have it for like 10 days. So there's a little on it right now.
Still being reviewed by Mr. Suber's office. I can't write anymore because I'm so used to typing everything. Like now I work on a laptop at work, so I take the laptop with me to every meeting and just type everything out. It's like I can't write. My handwriting is horrendous.
I'm right, I'm thinking.
Oh, it's terrible. I don't write enough. I never. All right. So new business. Now, you said you had something that you wanted to get into. Is that 202?
That's 202.
Okay.
Here's where we're at. If you notice on 202, I'll speak very generically. If you notice in that policy, it talks about
I gotta find it. All right,
Okay, under former residents,
hold on a second. It's not here, 202. (204), 202, 219. Nope, 202 is not in here.
yeah, it's on the digital drive.
All right. All right, so you'll have to.
Okay,
Speak
I'll
to it.
basically tell you what it is and the concern that it may cause for us. Basically, in this policy, what it does is it allows a student who moves out of the school district, okay, in their senior year, okay, if they've completed the first semester, then they may remain at Daniel Boone. Now, on the surface, that sounds very reasonable, and it actually does sound very reasonable. But what I wanted to bring to your attention is, and we kind of learned from a neighboring school district, it could be a very costly student if we are not, if it without going into great, it literally, there are students out there that cost six figures
Oh, yeah.
for us to educate. And although on the surface that seems very reasonable, in reality is if that student happens to have extraordinary needs that require extraordinary services, it could cost the school district a lot of money. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It seems very reasonable, and it does. However, it also can be very costly.
We're not talking about transportation, right?
We're not talking about transportation because that's easy. You can make the parent do the transportation
Okay.
piece. We're talking about other needs that the student may
Yeah.
have that could end up costing the district a fortune. I mean, for a lot.
So how do you want to?
Well,
Have we-
there's the question. We have two choices. We have not gotten into a situation where that's hurt us particularly. It has hurt other districts, surrounding school districts. And I guess the only reason why I brought this up is I wanted to bring it to your attention because it could be a costly thing. It seems in the overwhelming majority of cases, it's benign. It doesn't cost the district anything having that right there to that extent. But it could turn into a very costly thing if it happens to be a student that needs special services of some sort, or we can't discriminate against one student or another student depending on their cost if that policy is written, obviously. So I just wanted to point out to you guys that as that's written, it could be a very costly amendment to.
All right. Well, so what's the recommendation then?
Well, my question is, it's a service to our families. Here's what I'm saying. It's a service to our families to do that. However, it could be an expensive service to our families.
No, I get that. I guess I'm saying you want to change the policy to say we shouldn't do it at all, or do you want to extend it where like you have to be here for half the year? Like what's...
I would say, I mean, to me, I think half the year. If they spend half the year with us, you know what I mean, then they can finish the.
I mean, how often does this happen?
Very rarely.
How would that work? So if they move out of the district,
How this?
Like I'm here for the full semester. My parents moved to Twin Valley. I can
so then
still
they
I
would
can
drive-
stay here.
They would drive here.
They would provide their own transportation.
Excuse me.
I mean, to me,
So here's the question: if I, in that situation, I move to Boyertown, but I'm still going to go to Daniel Boone. Does Boyertown? Do we charge back Boyertown for having that student come to our district?
No. That's not how it works.
So we don't get
We don't on this. We don't get any tuition back on this.
Okay. Huh.
So you'd want to keep it at a minimum,
You want to
half a year or.
or even smaller. I mean, depending on what.
Let the record show Mrs. Bites is now in attendance, and we're on policy 202, Carol. It's not in our packet. It was in the print. It's in the online version. So the issue is that Mr. Hurley and the administration is more or less just pointing out that if, as the policy stands now, we're at risk to footing quite a bill. So like if we have a special needs child who, the parents elect to keep their child here, they're able to do that if they've attended at least one semester of the year. And
I have some questions about that myself.
Well, now, say it would magnify into that kind of needs. What about transportation for a person that has desperate needs to get here?
Well, and I think the other piece of this whole thing is we ought to clarify the transportation piece of the policy. So, like, even that's left pretty vague, in there.
Well, so now here we're gonna let them come in after one semester, but then we're going to assume transportation costs for
it's tricky. See, we're in a bad spot here on this.
Yeah.
I mean, that could you say one that could go.
so PASBA doesn't have any verbiage in there about this.
They don't.
I think this is just a kind thing that
Districts.
a kind thing that's going to.
extremely
Yeah, what do we know what neighboring districts do?
You know,
I can
this
tell
is
you the executive session.
right.
We're talking about
I
former
know
residence section.
we are, yes, former residents, and you see where it says.
It does say may be permitted though. Does that mean it has to come to the board for approval?
Well, I think what the hang up would be if you say maybe and you have a senior who can drive himself, he comes, but then you have a special needs student who
Right.
has
You can't
a nurse
discriminate.
and an aide and needs a special classroom placement and has all those things. You couldn't say, well, no, we're not going to let you do it because
We
we
would be
cost too much
subjected
money.
to litigation then.
Right.
Is your is what your
So why does it say may?
Yeah.
why don't we just take it out?
Well, but I feel like- I guess what I'm saying is,
Take it out.
if the administration feels like there's a concern with this policy, then I would ask that you guys give us a recommendation. How would you prefer it to be written? And I would imagine that we need to have someone, maybe a special education lawyer, look it
Maybe
over
this was- yeah.
to make sure that we're not.
How about we come with a recommendation, exact verbiage for our next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, include the pieces that you are concerned about, like transportation.
Yeah.
I mean, like maybe maybe the concession is we leave it at 1/4, but we're not responsible for transportation, or I don't know, whatever you think is. I'm not making a suggestion. I'm just saying, like whatever you think is fair. But I think the thing is we have to administer it
Consistent.
equally
Yes,
among
we do.
all students. So.
I mean, it's the bad thing's going to have to be we can't have any loose ends in that, and to write that just
Right.
so that's. But I know over the years I read some articles of Wilson students that had some special needs, and they were extremely costly.
Yeah.
All right, so you'll give a recommendation. Is it fair to say we can get one by next month, next meeting?
Next meeting. But you see how that could be real costly, real quick, guys?
Oh, yeah.
I just have a question, and I apologize if it was already in the discussion. Is there a current policy out there that speaks to this? Have we been functioning under a current policy?
This is the current policy. This right here is the current policy.
This is from PASBA, isn't it?
We brought this back up, and
So the one that's out there approved by previous boards, the one that's in practice, is
Yes.
there anything?
it has not burned us yet. And
It's been out there like this, it just has never burdened
It
us.
hasn't burned us.
Would you ever be able to go back to the neighboring district that should take responsibility for that student, even though they want to come finish the year out here? Would there be any financial obligation to that district? Like a bill back?
Surprised. That's what I asked.
So, I
Is
mean,
there a chargeback? I'm surprised that there wouldn't be, but
Why this extraordinary effort? I mean, if you move, you move. Why are we? This seems like an extraordinary effort. that
Well, I
we're
mean,
not-
if
like,
you've been here
financial
11,
position.
you've been here 11 and a half years and you want to finish.
There's
and
nothing
you're-
that says that person can't petition the board anyway. It doesn't have to be in our policy. If somebody wants an exception, they can always come and ask for it. We don't have to.
You're you're all right,
modify
the board
that.
can make an exception.
Right.
That-
Absolutely.
You know what?
Well, I mean, that could be the recommendation, that you want all cases to come in front of the board.
Strike it. I don't
That
know.
may be the answer right there.
I mean, basically, it could be as a parent, as a.
I think there's a danger with that, though,
I
too,
do
because,
too, because they're gonna
you know,
write-
then you have a board, it's not, we're not legal experts, and then we're gonna sit here and vote on something, and we may be discriminate, like, we might say,
And
we
you
would
might
run
be
it through a
doing it to
solicitor.
financially, you know.
right, well, I'm sure the finance is gonna pay into it, like,
Oh, as soon as
oh,
they-
this
as soon as
student's
they
gonna
mention
cost us 120,000, never mind, no, thank you.
Right.
Oh, this student's gonna drive themselves and just one more kid in the classroom, no problem.
Yeah.
Like,
Right, that's-
I would prefer to have some type of policy. We can still say vote approval, but we would need to have council recommend our action anyway, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So I'd rather pay council to have a look at the policy than to have them review every case and make sure that we vote accordingly.
I know I spoke briefly to Tom. I mean, it's not a policy he recommends because of the situation. So,
Thank you for bringing those concerns to our attention.
No, it's definitely a concern. All right. Searches. This is policy 226. It's like the most bizarre title for a policy. So this is about search and seizure, searching students, searching lockers, right?
And then that's
So this is a completely new policy. So all of it is reviewed by PASBA. This is not a change in our policy. This is completely new. I'm really surprised at what the state allows us to do.
Yep. There's a lot of latitude.
Yeah, there is. Basically, we're allowed to search them whenever we want, and their including their lockers, their belongings, their clothes, if they're on school grounds.
I mean, we've done that in the past with locker searches, like large scale at the high school.
We're even allowed to look at their text messages and call logs
We want to run dogs through the building, for drugs.
without the student's consent. That one, we have to have reasonable suspicion. So I guess that's a situation where
So if you ask,
someone's running a little business out of the school and we want to check their phone, we believe that they're doing something illegal in the school, we can check their phone if we have suspicion.
so if you look at the student, you ask for their phone, legally they have to give it to you?
I mean, that's what this suggests.
Or is that after the police are called?
I mean, it says, the board authorizes the administration to conduct searches of student or their belongings, including lockers, automobiles, electronic devices, purses, backpacks, clothing, and other possessions in accordance with the standards set forth in this policy.
But you need to go to investigate bullying and cyberbullying and things like that. So that if they're going to be responsible for it, which there should be something that you're going to be responsible.
Now, this also says, this is pretty important, it gets into, it says, superintendent or designee in consultation with the district solicitor shall develop guidelines and procedures to implement this policy. So I'm assuming that means we have to have some process for conducting these said searches.
Yeah, I mean, like generally you don't have teachers doing searches. Generally.
Do we have guidelines for that?
And we do have AG, I believe, for searches.
Okay.
A little caution I have with this is when searches involving removal of clothing or examination, it very clearly specifies who should be examined. We would also want to make sure that wherever this room is, maybe it should be designated so it doesn't have a camera. I don't know where it would, I hope you would think that out in the guidelines, that there's no chance that that could be reported in any way. In the guidelines.
I mean, this is, to me, you don't have any,
I have no issues with this.
all right. Um, 227, controlled substances paraphernalia. So this is previously policy 218. Oh, Carol, did you need a this one's got a ton of supporting documentation. So the big changes are focused on defining like some of the new, what the drugs are, what constitutes paraphernalia.
There's steroids in it, it talks about that.
Yeah. It brings in over-the-counter drugs as well. Yeah, there's a whole section on just on steroids. Is that still a thing?
Hopefully, they are doing it.
No, but I mean, is that something that that was, I know when I was in high school, that was
Athletes still
all the
do it.
rage. Kids were doing it all the time.
Athletes do it.
They still do it.
It just,
Hopefully none of ours.
yeah, just breaking out, defining a little more than in the past.
And it also gets into the off-campus activity, like when they're driving to and from school, they're in extracurricular activities. If it's inhibiting school functions and classroom, basically it's almost reads like regular behavior. So to me, it's.
All to the best.
Any concerns, Mr. Hurley?
Guys, generic stuff, yeah.
You guys good with it as is? All right, student government. This is a brand new policy. I mean, this is basically just saying that our policy is that we have a student government.
Yep.
That's pretty much it. And then that we would have guidelines on how it operates. But it's basically, we're required to give the students an opportunity to participate in student government.
And we do already, right?
Yes.
We just, it wasn't codified.
Yep, we do it all our seminars.
Well, I guess it's just, everyone did it, but it was never required, no one, we didn't really need a policy because pretty much every school did it. I mean, even the elementary schools have.
Yeah, is it all the schools?
Yeah, they
Within
have
all the
something,
schools?
yeah.
I don't know that it's necessarily called student government, but they have like student representatives in each classroom. My son had told me that there was an election this week or whatever at AEC. It's like, jeez, they started him early.
Gonna run for president.
Yeah, he's an elected official.
Although it does specify for this, for the sake of this policy, we're only ensuring it grades 9 through 12,
Yep.
9 through 12. Good. I like it.
All right. Student fundraising.
Now.
This is Carol's vote. This is Carol's favorite.
You have an hour?
Can we come back to this? Because I did not honestly have a chance to revisit this compared to the one that we put in front. Or are you ready to,
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. You can see it. There really isn't much to change.
I wonder if some of this should be amended to ours. I'd like to put it side by side.
I mean, the issue for us is all the other fundraising that.
So they define it. I would hope our policy had a definition of the way I don't know.
I mean, it's basically going back like it always is, the building principle. For proof. So,
Yeah, I know that wasn't in our policy.
that was, Preston had made some judgment calls on some fundraisers last week.
See, I think we have to put that in our policy too, under delegation of responsibility. Collections by students on behalf of school organizations outside of schools may be permitted only by the superintendent. So that's like Relay for Life, right? It's an outside organization, and that, we might have to put that in our, we could benefit by putting it in our existing policy.
What do you want to add?
Under delegation of responsibility,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that is in the current policy, that there can be fundraising by organizations outside of the school. My example is Relay for Life, and it has to have specific superintendent.
Well, the students volunteer for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do teams, it's a big to-do, there is a lot of money. But what I'm saying is it is a collection by students, and it's done during school time. There's a lot of stuff in school property. We've hashed this out a million times, and we're okay with it, but I don't know that our policy specifically, our current policy, we're talking about keeping our existing policy, right? And just taking what we want out of this one, or not? Are we throwing away the existing policy?
No, it's just amending, the PASBA is amending our existing policy.
But if you give it one more cycle, I can intuitively pull out what should be in our existing one from this, like that
Well,
statement.
and I guess that I would say just make sure we're not, there is another
And then it doesn't negate.
There is another policy around, this is for specific to student fundraising.
Yeah, 229, that is the student fundraising policy. So we would not want to adopt this, or we would be canceling out all the work that we did on our existing student fundraising policy. We worked on it extensively. I don't think we want to take passwords.
That, I guess, the one we looked at before wasn't specific to students, right? It was just fundraising.
I'm pretty sure we have 229. That was the one we hashed out. If you give me a month on this, I'll be better.
All right.
And make a suggestion. As a person who sort of drove that issue over the years, would Mr. Hurley seem to be all right with that? Can we
Yeah,
get down the road
absolutely.
one more meeting?
Absolutely, there was a lot of thought.
I'll
put
be
into
way
that,
prepared
yeah.
to at least articulate changes that we don't want to negate the work that we did in the other policy.
All right.
Is that all right?
Yeah,
Is that the
absolutely.
plan? Okay.
Public performances by a student. This is also a brand new policy. So this is basically saying that we're okay with students participating in public performances. It's shocking we need a policy on this. So if anyone requests our students perform publicly, the board has to approve it. So I guess if someone says they want our band to come perform at a parade, we have to okay it? Right? Isn't that how you're reading it?
That's how I'm reading that, yeah. You guys want to get in the weeds that far?
Well, it's pretty generic. It just says, the board endorses public performances by students when they constitute a learning experience that contributes to the educational program. They do not interfere with other scheduled activities, and the circumstances of the events do not pose a threat to health, safety, or well-being of the students. All requests for public performances by student groups require the approval of the board.
I mean, I would think if you're joining, say, marching band, you already know, or choir, or football, or anything.
Yeah, like if I don't know, there's a celebration in New Jersey and they want our band to, they request our band to perform,
The board gives approval.
the
for
board
that,
would
right?
have to approve that trip, right? The board would have to.
You would be anything that
Yeah.
far, you probably be involved.
And the board.
I mean,
would
we're
approve.
speaking specifically about performances, not like Key Club or like conferences or any of that. That
Yeah,
this
you're
is
talking about performances.
this is like
The
like
question is, when you go to the retirement
Yeah.
down the road, do you guys also want to be, you know what I mean? You want to be involved.
I mean, I guess there's a difference between the kids on their own volunteer to go there versus their.
Then again, usually all that's in the back of the agenda that we, you know, even when they go to the Keystone Villa, Mrs. Snavely takes the group down there at Christmas. She has that all listed. There again, there's, there's no harm, I don't think, to the policy. Just that it's going to be already, it's coming to the board already, so it's just double.
Yeah, but we asked that to be like a notification. We're not actually approving that. I don't think we don't do any voting on those. That's just like an addendum to the.
Kind of notify, I think. It's
Yes.
just kind of
Unless it's a
like,
little
yeah, if
trip.
it's to Jersey or something, it's different.
Like I'm thinking like the theater group or the band or the two that's or cheering, maybe the cheering team. I don't know. Like
So basically, for say 5 or 6 competition that the band has, they're going to have to get approval for all those dates, which they know already. Mr. Wolf knows those dates in the spring, basically set up for the next oncoming year.
yeah, like if they have a competitions, I don't know that that's the same thing. It's just saying for requests for
Yeah.
performances.
They're performing.
The question
Yeah, but
is-
it-
yeah, it's a good question.
Because it says
It's a tough one.
Because it's not just you're not performing for one group. You're performing for the general public.
yeah, it just says all requests for public performances. So if the band has scheduled performances, that doesn't fall under this.
I'm thinking that would be interscholastic. That would be an interscholastic.
That's like extracurricular.
It's like an interscholastic extracurricular. Whereas if the mall wants you to acquire singing around Christmas or something, like they have Berkshire Hall and they write courses and that once in a while, that might be a public performance that might require. I mean, that's kind of what I'd be thinking. What are your thoughts?
I just don't feel like there's going to be a whole lot of activity that falls under this. Like I always wonder, like whenever these policies are new, I'm always like, what's motivating the policy? Like what are we trying to cover? And I just don't, like I feel like this isn't something, like how many times do we get a call and someone says, we want your band to perform or we want, like even now that these guys are here, the RTC, when they do stuff, they bring it in here and they tell us. I mean, like, I don't know what else there would be. Like, they had to come in here and approve they did
Obstacle course.
the obstacle course with actual reservists, right? We had to approve that.
don't we approve all of their public performances? I
It's trying to
think
think.
if we don't, I'm afraid it might be an insurance issue if we look down on the policy. I think
That's-
it's
that's
just
a
like
good
a
point, too.
CYA, that if there's an injury, when these,
That's a good point.
it's going.
What's
I
that?
think it should, even
Budgetary,
if it's just a
you're
consent.
approving all those different groups.
You don't want the
Right.
insurance company to be able to split hairs and say, oh, the board ever approved that trip, we're not paying that health claim. I think if it's not in practice already.
So let's leave it as is. Let's leave that part as is. Go with that.
I
Don't
think
hurt
we're
it.
already practicing this. I think Mr. Harris lets us know every time they're off-site. Public performance, being anytime they're out.
We can add delegation responsibility. We can add a line that says the board shall be notified of any and all public performances that are not, that are like, or any and all planned public performances.
Notified, not saying it has to be
Right.
approved.
Like this is specific to requests. All requests for public performances. And is that a request by who? Somebody outside, or is that a request, internal
Tell me this.
request?
Okay, well, here. Okay, so field trip request, marching band,
We're already
Boyertown.
doing them, guys, yeah.
So they're
I'm not
already-
sure what's
they're already back
worried
there.
about again. The approval, if it's on our agenda and we scan it, that's
You know,
approved.
basically
That's approved.
Field work.
Because we didn't,
fundraising request, use of facility. So it's
it's just gotta all be out there and
you are being notified. So I keep the policy as.
this is, I'm disinclined to change it when it comes, it's already been through, legal hands as is, and it ties in with this section 511, the public school code.
So we're just going to leave it as is?
Yeah.
And that does emphasize, for the administration, these have to be learning experiences in some way. We don't want it again. So here's with the insurance company. It says, we endorse the public performance by students when they constitute a learning experience that contributes to the educational program. That should always be borne in mind before these things come for approval. Okay, good?
I'm good.
I'm good with it as is. Input or anything?
Yeah, if you look at the supporting documentation, the section 511 of this public school code, I think that item B is any school or any class activity or organization thereof with the approval of the board may affiliate with any local district, regional, state, or national organization whose purposes and activities are appropriate to and related to the school program. So it seems like they're trying to cover
Plus in compliance.
they're trying to cover the outside organization versus our own planned activities. Right? Like this isn't, I want to schedule a cavalcade. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about,
I thought we were talking about anytime that kids go off site.
all right.
Public school, another public school would be a public performance. Performance at the mall, performance at the nursing home. They would all be public performances by student group.
Well, so this talks about, the next policy actually addresses some of this that you're talking about, Carol. This 231, the social events and class trips. How you doing?
Do you know what time it starts, the meeting?
7:30.
7:30?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe just selling out things that we've already sewed up.
Yeah, this is like,
This is
That's
transparency.
really a
and
minimal tweak.
accountability. 101.
it just says that class trips and social events that take place outside of school facilities require approval by the board. We're already doing that.
And they have to be conducted in policy. I think these these are all the things we've already cleaned up.
All right. Student involvement in decision-making. This is a new policy. So this basically is, we're required to have a student-driven, like, feedback process or improvement process, right? It sounds like,
My view of that is
redundant.
just you're taking into consideration.
it's an intake process.
Yeah, you're taking into
Right.
consideration what the students have to say, you're not totally ignoring that, but it's balanced against the educational needs, and also the community needs.
I think that's illustrated by our rep on the board and our student board government.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like we have a student representative at the board meetings.
That illustrates our commitment to this. Which again, I think we cleaned up a lot of these things. I think it sounds like the rest of the state is a little behind us, quite frankly, because we've already done so many of these things. But it's good to get them codified.
All right.
Typo under authority,
Where, on that one?
expella, should be 2 words.
Which one are we looking at?
Authority, oh, I'm sorry, 233? Are we on 233?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I hadn't gotten there yet. Okay. Where am I looking?
233 under authority, there's a typo.
Expella.
Expella.
Suspension and expulsion. Is this in line?
How's this look?
This is all what we already do. We have to follow
Yes,
this.
it's all legal stuff. Like,
Oh,
So we don't really have a choice in this.
not a whole lot, guys, there's not much. They're basically due process rights that you have to give students.
And the administration pretty familiar with this policy?
Very, very.
I imagine you stay up on things like this all the time.
I mean, what about like in-school suspension and all that? Do we follow this to the letter, just like this is the way it's written?
Yeah, basically, yeah, if it's more than 3 days, you do it in the 4 year, which we do anyway with the parents. You know, it's basically sitting down talking with the parents about it. It's more than 3 days.
To your credit, my 4 years, we've never gotten involved with any of this being done incorrectly. And I'm sure it's been done. So you guys must know it pretty well.
All right. This is also new, student rights. Although, no, it says it's, oh no, I'm sorry, 234, pregnant parenting married students.
I guess hopefully one comes with the other, but have we had married students?
I haven't had parents. I'm aware.
I mean, this is basically just saying you can't be denied education if you're married or either pregnant or with a child. If a student should become pregnant during the year, do we make concessions to get them, like when they're out, obviously, for...
We try to work, there's homebound
Yeah,
instruction, there's
that's what I
things
mean.
to do. There's cyber school, we have an internal cyber school we can use, there's a whole bunch of different things. We can and have used those options in the past.
That's where it says an alternate educational program?
Yeah, we try to work with the student and his family, get the families involved with it.
Okay.
And try to come up with a reasonable solution. Like I said, it can be homebound, it can be cyber, it can be, there's a couple of different things we can do.
Any concerns on this one? This is pretty cut and dry. All right, last but not least, 235, brand new policy, student rights and responsibilities. I mean, this feels like a general, like, blanket, like, all students are required to follow the rules of the school and the state.
Yeah, it's very interesting that they have this, because we were thinking at one point that we would like to see everyone involved in the district, teachers, students, administrators, all have to sign and to know the policies and have signed off on them, which I mean, I know we do in our handbooks, but that's basically what this is. This is saying your rights are based on your compliance or to your obligations. Here they are. And for that you get education and blah, 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 blah. Yes, you have rights, but only if you comply with federal state laws, exercise proper care when using district facilities. If a kid's like smashing up the building or something, you can't say, you can't do that, I have rights, I have rights. Well, no, because your rights were based on the fact that you were in compliance with your responsibilities.
Well, and this is, all that is all covered in their handbook, right?
Yes.
Like, basically all the rules.
And this codifies that.
It's all covered.
All right.
But what they can't say is, I didn't know that there was a rule against that. I didn't know. That puts the onus on the kids to kind of know the board policy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have officially worked through the agenda. So we are, unless there's any further business we need to discuss, we can adjourn. Carol, you good?
Well, I'm just glancing ahead. We always like to look up at the future policies. Are they, at some point they should come on. Is anybody looking at those and getting them onto the, the new business?
On the back page, there's a section, on the back
So
page
is
of the
there
agenda.
Anybody working on these, I guess, any effort being made to get them up to new business? Future.
Well, I think the academic expenses, student fees, we have to create a policy for that or adjust our policy if we've adopted the new fee structure.
Or is that in production?
It'll change, depends on what the board wants to do in regards to,
No, but didn't we already we voted the change in?
so we can do what, what's in there.
Yeah.
So that's, we'll put that on for the next one.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that?
We voted on the sports fees, so we
And
need
I guess
to,
the iPad will be coming when the iPads come in. So that's kind of covered. Extracurricular, that was all covered in that new policy, right? Stipend and reimbursement policy, I think that was in the business office's hands. And I don't remember 007 at all, policy manual access after possible updates. What was that? What's the nature of that? Who's supposed to be looking into what on that?
I don't know where this came from.
What to,
Me either. So want to put it on new business next time and just print it out and see, have some talk about it, just to get it off for future policies? At least if we look at it, we can see if there's anything wrong with it.
And I thought we put the stipend and reimbursement policy to bed, but did we not?
I don't know, I think Mr. Small, maybe should be asked about that.
I'll check with Lauren on that. So that was done.
So the iPad policy will need to be developed this year.
Yep. There's a lot of policies out there. There's a couple of schools that borrow one.
Oh, yeah, I would think that would be fairly easy to obtain from current districts.
So I'll ask Kathy if there's more info on the stipend and reimbursement policy. All right. I'll also check with her to see like where we stand as far as the backlog of policies. Like, I feel like we're getting caught up with what PASMA's already sent us. So I'll give everybody an update once I know.
Do they release them in quarters or no?
Well, they had taken a hiatus for a little while for some reason. They got kind of backed up, and then they sent us a whole bunch at one time.
I think it was personnel.
Yeah.
It was at PASMA.
Remember, Carol had sent an email to him saying, you know, you were supposed to have this done in 3 years or whatever, or 2 years, and it's, you know, we're on year 3, and we're only a third of the way through the policies.
They might need another kick in the pants. Now I'm off the board in a couple months and still not done.
All right. Well, meeting adjourned.